This is Dream Chaser Donald Kelly, and you're listening to the Chasing Dreams with Aimee J.
Welcome to Chasing Dreams podcast with Aimee J. Aimee believes that realizing a life without regrets is achieved by taking chances, chasing your dreams, making moves, and overcoming your doubts. The Chasing Dreams podcast will help you overcome life's obstacles, believe in your potential, and inspire you to face your fears. And now here's the woman who is passionately pursuing her dreams, Aimee J.
Hey Dream Chasers, this is Aimee J, and thank you so much for tuning into episode 51. We have crossed over a milestone, and it is a wonderful day, beautiful sunny day today. And to help me bring some sunshine to your day in listening to this podcast, I have Donald Kelly. He's a powerful sales trainer, an award-winning speaker, and host of the most dynamic sales podcast, the Sales Evangelist. His sales experience expands across a variety of industries, including SaaS, IT technology training courses, home security systems, managed IT services, medical and sales training. And honestly, if you know the man, I don't think there's a limit to the industry he could do. Donald's mission is to evangelize the method of effective selling to motivate sellers of all levels to do big things. He's been featured on Yahoo Finance, Entrepreneur Magazine, Huffington Post, and that's just a few of the many. And he has been kind enough to come on the show today and talk about what he's doing. Hey, Donald, what's going on?
Aimee, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's fun to be here.
Now, Donald, I met you last year at Podcast Movement 2015, the second one that there's ever been. And there's no way anybody could have missed you. Donald was the MC for the entire program, and he was fantastic. What is that something you do? Do you just find conferences and hey, let's do it?
No, I had at New Media Expo 4 years ago, Jared, I helped Jared with some of the speaker introductions. He was working with the organizers, and he volunteered to do speaker introductions and to tell the organizers, hey, don't worry about that part. I'm going to take care of it for you. So he got a bunch of us to go to do introduction to some of these speakers, and then he gave me advice. He's like, be different when you do these. Don't be like everybody else and just like read a little script. So I tried to be different with it and had fun. And then he was like, look, when they did Podcast Movement, they're like, bro, we need to have you come on to Podcast Movement and do some of our introduction if you're willing. So I did it. I loved it.
I'm so glad they did. Excellent choice. Donald has come on to do MC for the Podcast Movement 15. Did you do the original?
Yeah, so the first year, second year, and the third year now. And
each introduction, I imagine was the same for the very first one, he's done a skit of sorts or an impersonation, and it was fantastic. And I think it's reflective of your personality, because you're a very fun, happy guy.
Thank you. Thank you.
But it comes across. You're very approachable. You're very kind. Right? You take your time with people and you talk. And I imagine that's something that you need with selling, right? And so is that something, I believe it's an innate part of your character? Have you always wanted to sell from a young age because of that? Or how did you fall into selling?
Family was the sales side. That's where that came from. My dad is an entrepreneur. My mom was always like hustling, and my aunt. So everyone around me back in Jamaica, so I was born, were interested or doing something with sales, or that's how you survive. Like most people, they think in especially in a country like ours, like the U.S., we go to work, right? You go to work 9 to 5, and that's it. You get your job, you get your money, wham bam, it's done.
Yeah, you see it all the time.
Yeah, and in most other countries, that's not the way it is. You got to find a way to make it happen. You just have to find a way to get it done, whether it's going out selling mangoes or going out selling fruit on a corner, going and, whatever you need to do, buying products from the U.S. and selling it. And so it wasn't necessarily like, I just saw it as that's how you survive. That's instead of looking at it like you go to school, gain this degree, and then you get a 9 to 5 job. for me, survival was just that. You hustle. You go out and you hustle. So putting that in context, I started doing it as a kid. I would sell things in a front yard, and get a little change in your pocket, or sometimes it failed horribly and nobody bought anything. But it was just that nature. So that's how the sales side came. And see my dad in business doing that, I was like, okay, so this is how business is. This is what you need to do. I want to be a businessman, quote unquote. And I associated business with selling. And then my personality, I always loved to. I would say I got this from church, in a sense. I used to go to some of these very passionate churches, I would say, as a kid in Jamaica, and you see the ministers up there, and I'm like, dude, that would be cool to be able to move an audience. So I think that's where I got that idea of being in front of a group. So my cousins and I used to pretend like we were preachers after church, and she had little dolls. We put the dolls up and get her little brother to sit down and listen to us, and like we're having a little church service. So I just love the idea of being in front of the audience. So you combine those two, now you have a passion to do business and to quote unquote sell, and this ability to want to be out there and to be outgoing and to entertain, and it leads to a multiplicity of ability to have success in the business world, because now I've come to realize that selling is not just like, selling, it's entertaining. What can I do to entertain and move people? And then as a natural byproduct, they will get educated from what I have to offer and find value in it and come and buy what I have to sell. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the formula for success in sales. It's just that's my personality. That's how I work it. And I use that towards like the presentations or speaking. I try to entertain and bring value to people. And as a natural byproduct, I usually build relationships and connect with folks and find opportunities, which leads to stuff like this.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes to what Jared was telling you before, be different. And you really do stand out with that personality and how you do things. And so you have that ability from your family, right? You're surrounded by entrepreneurs at a young age. You grow up around entrepreneurs. It's not necessarily that you get formal education in selling, though. So was most of your education before, I don't even know, did you get formal education? Was it from watching your family sell and kind of cataloging what they're doing and what worked and didn't work, and kind of building upon that as you went through life? And then maybe you had formal education, maybe you didn't. Did you think it was necessary?
It was. I thought I was cool and all, and I thought I didn't necessarily need it. I would say early on in sales, I just thought it was like in a natural thing. You either have it or you don't. So that was my mentality, I guess. And then I started doing sales, and the middle school sales that I did was I started to become entrepreneurial. And I guess I thought more of it, not more sales, but more of like I'm an entrepreneur. So I used to buy candy at reduced rates at Albertsons. I think they had it like for, that you can get like these Reese's bars and Snickers for like 50 cents. And I used to sell them for $1. So I would make make my money back. Great profit margin. And
that's awesome.
And then I would, just kind of, that's what was my thing. I just started doing that, and I thought it was fun and it was good, and I was making money. So I therefore equated that I was a good seller because of the fact that I was doing that stuff. And then when I got into college and in high school, I did little things here and there. I formed little, businesses for a couple months with friends and did like cleaning or house repairs and, yard work. And that's how I, make money to go back to school and things of that nature. But then when I got older and I got into college, I started selling for more traditional companies, and it was a little bit different, but I was still selling to consumers, which were still easy. Selling one-on-one to that individual is different than selling B2B, selling to a business, selling a complex software or something to that nature. So the B2C side, I was okay. and did some more stuff in college. Did some of the things you've mentioned in my introduction, like the door-to-door security. I did some of the IT training classes and things of that nature. But then when I got into the B2B world, it was a different beast. Selling to a executive or selling to a business owner, people that I didn't have much interaction with. And that's when I realized I didn't really know how to sell. I knew how to sell it, I guess, the lower level, but now when you get to the big boys league, I wasn't too great at that. And it wasn't until I got formal sales training, then I started to realize the notion that I had before was that you had to have this great personality to be successful in sales. You had to be outgoing like I was or some of these other people, and I would try to capitalize on that. Again, granted, you utilize what gifts you've been given towards your ability. And anyone can sell. And that's what I came to learn after going through that sales training program. My sales trainer, because I used to think that you had to be like this, super beautiful lady or, dress a certain way, and a guy had to dress a certain way and look a certain way. And, in order for them to be, just cool, this real slick Rico Suave or this, sexy Jane to be successful.
You mean those things that you see on TV
exactly.
all the time? Mm-hmm.
All those movies that you see. And so that's the stigma that I had. But when I saw my boss, she was nothing like that, and she was killing it. And I was like, holy moly, mind blown. Things changed. And I saw some of the successful sellers, and I'm like, they don't fulfill this category that I see depicted in movies. So it came quickly. Then this ideology was adopted that in order to be successful in sales, it doesn't require you to be able to be like to dress and to look like everyone. You just have to have the desire and know what to do. And when I learned that in the sales training, like the what to do part, the formulas, like how to ask questions, to listen, to look for the value and to add value, those were the skills. Then when I got that, it was like a rocket, and my sales performance became like a hockey stick. So I was able to use my personality coupled with the training and my desire to be successful, and I started to perform really well. So that's why I adopted this. And I used to talk to Jared, because Jared and I worked in the same company in the software industry. And then I was like always talking about sales and the stuff that I'm learning in J Money. I call him J Money. Jared was like, dude, you need to go, you need to form your podcast. And I had a name that I used to be the technology evangelist in one of the IT companies I work for. And then he was like, you're like a preacher. You're always talking about it. And I was like, yeah, like the evangelist. And he was like, yeah, you should that should be it, the Sales Evangelist. And that's how the name came about, the Sales Evangelist. And it developed where I started to evangelize effective ways of selling. I started to share, because I started to think, how many people are out there who are like me, who may think they know what to do, but they're failing horrible at sales and just want to give up. But there's a way that it can be successful, and that's why we formed a podcast. And then from that podcast became coaching and training to where we are today. So long way to answer the question, but you can bring what you have, and then you need to add training to it. You have to have training if you want to be successful.
So quick question to clarify that. Were you doing the podcast while you were working, or was that when you kind of went on your own?
Great question. I was doing a podcast while I was working. Okay. So it was just a hobby, man. I listened to my first podcast I listened to with Seth Godin, Startup League, I believe, or something to that nature. Seth Godin podcast, where he interviewed with these other, he had a weekend with these entrepreneurs where he did a training with them and he recorded it. And I got so bummed because at the end of it, I was like, I want more. It was like, I want some more. I felt like a fiend. Give me more. Give me more. And then I started listening to Pat Flynn's, and I was like, I'm hooked on this sucker. So I started to talk more about podcasting. I started to tell more people about about this idea of podcasting, and TSE, the Sales Evangelist, just became this hobby. And if money came from it, so be it. But it was just like, let's develop this. I didn't know how that could be turned into an effective business. You know what I mean? I mean, Pat Flynn was killing it, but that was a different beast. So anyways, just a hobby, and then it's just started to grow. So I started a podcast December 2013, and that's when it went live on iTunes. And then it just was at that point, I wanted to do a startup before I even started working in that software sales job. But in college, I made a goal to either at a certain time to work for a startup, create a startup, or go for an MBA. And TSE became that startup. So it was in mind, it was a plan, it was there. And once TSC started to form, and after year one, we started to see some traction. Some money started coming in. So my wife and I made a plan, and then we had a couple more years, or a year and a half. So last year, when I fully jumped ship, we had been going with the podcast for a little bit over 2+ years, and saw some income. So therefore, we decided to take that leap, at least for me at that point. And now, so this year, it's been one full year that I've been doing TSC full time.
Well, first of all, congratulations. That's
Thank you, ma'am.
awesome. Be able to kind of have your own roots, your own little island, if you will. So when you did this, right, and I kind of want to go back to something you had said earlier, when you went to the big leagues, just before you reached the big leagues, right, you were kind of coasting. It's kind of how I felt in high school. Like, I was smart, I knew what I was doing, got A's, I did great. Then I get to college, and it's like, hey, the game's changed a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that in looking back, and now I know you said with formal training, but in general, for anybody who is chasing their dream, do you feel that once you realized that things were going to be different, or you would have to be different to operate at that next level, do you think people can succeed if they stay the same?
No, I don't think you can't stay the same and expect to grow exponentially. And this is something that I'm even looking at right now with TSC. Like, we are at a point where we were making some change, making some moonlighting, and then we got to the point where we started to generate some income, and now we need to go to the next tier, the next level. You have to challenge yourself and get beyond your comfort zone, and you can't, or it's not worth it to do it alone, if that makes sense. Like, for instance, if I was going to go to California,
mm-hmm.
why in the world will I try to hack my own way across the plains and across all these states when I can easily take the interstate and drive, or better yet, I can get on a plane. Somebody already figured out the route there. Why don't I follow and see what they've done and then improve on it? Don't make it harder for yourself. And if you're forming a business, this is why it's important you get like a business coach, or you get a mentor, somebody who's been doing it, somebody who's been through that jungle, been down a path before, and you ask them, hey, what do I need to look for? What are some of those things that I can learn from? It's important for us to learn from other people. Not that you have to depend on other people, but you learn from other people. And then you take that and apply it. Because the way somebody does something may not be the exact same way that you have to do it, but you want to utilize and learn about what are the pitfalls, what are the challenges in forming a business, what are the difficulties in sales, what are the difficulties in being a parent. Look and see what are some of the things that people have done and learn from that and utilize it to help you. And especially if you look at any successful business, any one of these organizations that are going, just like leaps and bounds and, doing well in the industry, they've partnered with the right people. A lot of them are partnered with the right folks, and a lot of them have allies or people that they can lean on to gain insight from. And they do just like business relationships that can help catapult their business into the whole nother stratosphere. So the key is to get with the right people, get the proper training, get the proper education, no matter what you're doing. If you look at it with athletes, why in the world do athletes have personal trainers? I mean, LeBron James is great already. Why does he need somebody else? Because everyone needs that person that's going to push them, that's going to guide them, who's going to help them to look and see what are some of the issues you have, and let me help you fix that to get to the next portion. So I highly recommend it for any industry.
I mean, that's a great analogy, because the Olympics are coming up, the Summer Olympics, and
oh yeah,
I'm sure I know all those athletes have their own coaches. They have a team that help them.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like you use the word team, and you're exactly right, because some of them, like for instance, I wish I had this, not there yet, but I still like to cook. But some people, those athletes, they have someone who cooks specifically for them that coordinates with their dietitian and their trainer.
Oh, I'm with you.
So the dietitian. I know it would be awesome to have somebody who knows my eating what I need to eat to keep in the ideal shape, and they cook the food for me and have it ready. I would like to cook some of my meals, what I mean? But the fact is, it's easy for them because they literally have a team of folks. Somebody says, this is a workout routine we're going to follow. This is what some of the foods we need to eat. These are some of when you're in season, this is what you need to be doing to be at peak performance. Some of them have mental coach or, motivation coach. I have a couple friends, my buddy and I putting on a conference later this year, and he worked in an organization where that's exactly what he did. Like, they would get these athletes who came in, and their job was to help them prepare for the mental side and the physical side to go out and perform. So you literally have this team of people that are working with these athletes. Why do we think as an individual that we don't need that? And I'm telling you, if you see anyone who rose from the bottom to the top, we might say they're a self-made millionaire. They're self-made millionaire, yes, in the sense that they didn't have they weren't born with it, but I guarantee you they got help and they had mentors and they had people along the way that guided them.
And actually, that's a great transition to the next question. You had, when you were young, your family around you, which one could argue is kind of your team, right? You were supported by them. They kind of helped you. Now you're here. Do you have your own version of a team right now?
I do. I actually have for my speaking side, I have a speaking coach, actually. I'm going for a Toastmaster competition this August. So cross your fingers, and whenever this episode goes live, I am going to the semifinals. So this is a top 100 speakers in Toastmasters coming together in Washington, D.C. from all over the world. And then if I win my round, then I get to go of the 10 rounds, they take the winner out of the 10 rounds of the 10 speakers in each round, and they get to compete for the world championship a couple days later of public speaking. So I could essentially, I'm close, 2 more rounds to win the world championship of public speaking. So that'd be pretty cool. And so I have a coach, and she literally works with me and helps me with that. So every week I get on a Skype call with her. I go over my speech and what are some of those things that I need to look at and need to work on and improve on and so forth. Then I have on my team, literally, we have folks who do the audio editing for the podcast. We have folks who do the show notes for the podcast. We have people who review the show notes, implement the show notes in our system and on the website. And, then we have folks who, my wife actually does some of the social media side to help sure the stuff gets out. And then we have an intern who does some things to coordinate and schedule me to go on the other podcasts and on the show. And then as a team, the company grows, then we have plans to then grow the team because I'm not going to be able to do all of the sales training and coaching myself. Our goal is to then reach out in a licensing model and to get other certified sales trainers with TSE who can follow our processes and help us to expand. So those are some of the things. You need a team. You need other folks to grow.
And guys, you can have your own team. The people around you, a support system, a mentor group, a mind group. There's so many different ways of coming up with it. Do you have any suggestions for people on how they can find people to be on their team?
Yeah, and the other part too, so this is another side of the team, the mastermind. I have a mastermind of almost like your advisors in a sense. But I meet every Friday morning. I meet with these other entrepreneurs who we get on a call together and we challenge each other. And that's a part of my support system, a part of my team. And your family. So my wife is a big supporter of the podcast and of the business and the community. But the first thing I would encourage everyone is to make sure you're a part of a mastermind. That's probably one of the easiest things you can do. That is a group of people. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to be a part of a paid group. Just find a couple other people who are doing or have the similar passions that you do. Maybe around, maybe a couple of them, one of them is a little bit further along, and that they all have a passion. If they're entrepreneurs, or if you're sellers, sales pros, or if you're trying to be better moms, or you're trying to be better cooks, you find a mastermind of people that will help challenge you, that you can set goals with, and that can keep you accountable, that can share ideas about things that's work, help you with some of the difficulties you may be coming upon. But that's one of the first things that you can do. Is to start getting your support system, is to get a mastermind of people around you.
And to that point, guys, you're not only getting help, but you're giving help. And I'm a big proponent of mentor-mentee relationships. And Donald, you said you had a coach. Do you think that of all the people you interacted with, would you call them mentors for you? And do you also mentor anyone?
I do. I would say, like right now, I have a couple people I'm mentoring and I work with. But let's go back to that first part of that question. Mm-hmm. It was more. Make sure I understand. It was if I have a.
Did you have mentors?
Yes. The mentors that I had included people in college. I remember one of my professors being an awesome mentor. He's like a business guy, just like cool stud, man. And I was like, this guy's awesome. I want to be like him. So I would reach out to him and and I would ask questions often, or I would learn from him, or I'd get ideas about industry and things of that nature. So he was a mentor to me. And then I had folks who I would, mentor from a distance, people that you maybe who are out there in professional worlds that maybe you idolize in a sense. And, so you read a lot of their books and you see what they're doing and, in that sense. So I call those mentors from a distance. And then you have the folks who are just right in your wheelhouse. Like Jared was an awesome mentor because I picked his brain a lot. And those who don't know Jared easily, I used to pick his brain a lot, and I still do. When I was starting a podcast and he shared ideas and insights, challenge, we get on a phone call every once in a while, go to lunch every once in a while, just kind of, you have someone that could be in your corner as a support. So that's where that ideology came from. And then as far as the people that I work with now, I have a couple of folks who found a podcast and, early on, and one of them, I'll give you an example. I'm going to give a big shout out to him, Stephen Hart. And he has a podcast called Trailblazers Podcast. And Stephen found me on Twitter like way back when my podcast was like first launched, and we became friends and online. And then he had the desire for a podcast, and he's put it off and tried and put it off for just different things come up in life. You know how it goes. But I kept pushing him, keeping him accountable until he finally launched his podcast and is doing fantastic right now. And he's connecting with some amazing people and has some plans to like leave, and he's seen the business model that could develop from this. And it's amazing. And we met in person for the first time at Podcast Movement this year, and he that's how he tells people. He's like, yeah, this guy's like my mentor. He was there, and we'd get on a phone call every once in a while, Skype, and there's other people who have salespeople who, they reach out to me every once in a while, ask a question, and they want to get a little bit of help, and I'm more than willing to connect with people and give them a little bit of advice. And then I have my formal training, coaching students, people who will reach out and they pay me to sit down with them for 1 hour each week, and we go through things to help them improve their sales or just like outreach for their business and business growth, whether individuals or who work for a company as a seller or they're an entrepreneur. So those are some of the mentors that I've had, and some of the mentees that I have now.
And your mentorship of Stephen, it wasn't a formal thing where you guys were like, hey, will you be my mentor? Will you be my mentee? And, let's do this. It kind of grew, right? It was a natural progression.
It totally was a natural thing. We were just friends and chatting, and I knew from his desires what he could do, and I'm like, bro, you need to be doing more. Stop this talking. Let's do some walking. And just kept pushing him. And obviously, again, I understood his timing, so I just stayed back from a distance and pushed from afar. And when we get on a call, I'm like, how you still interested in doing a podcast? Just things like that. And that's how it came. It was just like buddies and chatting and pushing.
And I asked that and had you talk about it because I just recently met Stephen. Fantastic guy. Definitely check out his podcast.
That's right. You did meet him. Yeah.
I did. And I'll share that story in just a second. But I'll have the link to Stephen's podcast in the show notes with Donald's information, guys. So definitely do that. But the point is that you don't always have formal relationships with mentors and mentees. It doesn't have to be labeled that way. There may be people in your life who are being supportive and you don't realize what they're doing. So, kind of keep an eye out, because there are people who, Donald and Stephen met on Twitter. I met Stephen at the Podcast Movement because of their conversation, actually. It was Stephen's first Podcast Movement, and he was tweeting, and Donald was retweeting. So I would never have seen Stephen if Donald had been retweeting. And I was like, wow, this guy is doing his first Podcast Movement. He's doing a new podcast. This is great. And I had made it a point at Podcast Movement to try and meet 75 Dream Chasers. It was just my goal. Last year we had done 62. And so I just wanted to kind of see how we could do this year. And we did 86, which was great. But Stephen was one of them. So I knew what he looked like because it was Twitter. And I saw him at the Podcast Movement. And I came up to him. And I think it surprised him. I don't think he saw that coming. I was like, are you Stephen Hart? And he was like, yes. And I didn't see his badge to answer that, so I think that threw him. It's like, I saw you interacting with Donald on Twitter, and I just wanted to meet you. And he was like, oh, wow, okay. And then we just got talking, and, we've interacted the same way. And it's amazing how one relationship can build another relationship and just kind of goes on and on. But it never would have happened if you hadn't taken an interest in what he's doing and been supportive with him and kind of built that relationship.
Oh, man, that is so cool. I didn't know that side.
Yeah,
That's how it came down. This is so awesome.
It's a small world, and social media can be an amazing thing. I mean, it does have its dark side, but it can be an amazing thing in bringing people together. And so you did a great job and are doing a great job mentoring Stephen. His podcast is awesome, guys. It's very fun. You should definitely check it out, just like Donald's is. But I want to go back to something you said. I don't want to downplay this, guys, because he's going for the semifinals of the Toastmaster World Championship, and that is an amazing feat. For those who are not familiar with Toastmasters, it is a organization that helps people who may not be comfortable in an audience, right? You don't just jump to professionalism. If you partake in this, you can kind of work your way there. So I did Competent Toastmaster, so I did the beginning part. So
awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm familiar with it. My dad is a DTM, so I'm familiar with the program, which is why I don't want to downplay this. Donald has gone from local level to area level. He's built himself up. How many times have you competed?
For this one, I mean, I've competed for the past 3 years, but this is the first time going to the semifinals. But yeah, you do the local, the area, division, district. So I've competed 4 different rounds of competitions levels, and now we're going to the semifinal round. So that means 3 years you've been working towards this. You haven't made it. You felt that loss at least twice. This is the 3rd year, I guess. And so you've made it this far. And guys, this is across the world. There are people from the Philippines, from China, from all around. It's not just the U.S. So I want to make sure everybody understands the enormity of this, which is an amazing thing. So congratulations. All the best as you perform. Is there anything that from your time in participating in the past 2 years with this one, and guys, we won't know how Donald has done when this episode airs. It'll be just probably, I guess, a few weeks short of it. So definitely wish him luck on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or anything you see him on. Is there anything that you look back and think, this piece of advice is something I need to take to the next one? I'm sure there was a number of speech-related stuff, but just overall in the process of going through this, did you ever think, I've tried 2 years in a row, it hasn't happened, I should stop? I mean, let's go back to the very, very beginning, and this will make a sexier story, knock on wood, when I win the World Championship of Public Speaking.
You heard it here first.
What's that?
You heard it here first?
Yeah. We need to replay this episode when that happens.
Fair enough. Okay.
But I went to my first Toastmaster meeting. I had my first little manual there, a competent communicator, and I wrote on, and I still have it, I will be the world champion of public speaking. And I saw Ryan Avery do it, and that's one of my motivators to say I'm going to do this. So I was like, I can do this. I know I can. So that's where that started. So that was a goal, and there was difficulties along the way, but I said I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up until I get there. So that kept me going. Even though when the times, those years, so fast forward to the times where I didn't make it, or I lost a competition or something to that nature, just didn't work out. I'm just like, you're bummed, but you just have to realize I need to go back to the drawing boards and then come back with another speech for year 2. Come back and a year, after the first year, and then now year 3, come back with another speech, and you just tweak and you work and you practice and you work and you get your mind set, get your head right. And there are those times where I feel like I felt like, is this even worth it? Do I need this? I wanted to give up, but I remember my goal. My goal was that I wanted to accomplish and to be the world champion of public speaking. So that kept me going. And it's important that we each have a why. We each have something that's going to drive us when times get difficult. We each need to have something that we can dig down upon. It's like having your North Star or having your bearings set properly, where you say, where you look, and whenever times get tough, you can say, I can go back and I can go and look back towards my navigation and know where I need to go. Without that goal, if I didn't have that vision, then it would be competing just to compete and then giving up. But I wanted to reach the top. I wanted to reach the world championship public speaking. So it motivates me to go in, do whatever means is necessary to make this happen. So that kept me going. So you need to, as every seller, you need to have that in your life. You need to have something that's going to guide you. Everyone is an entrepreneur. Everyone who's in any facets of business, you need to have that internal drive or that why that's going to keep you going.
And I think that's a great point, guys. If you don't have that why, you're just going to be chasing one thing after another, and that's not really chasing a dream. That's just chasing something for the chase to chase. Know why you're doing things. And that's actually a great segue to what is one thing you would recommend to someone outside of the why? What is an advice or resource or quote you would give to someone who is chasing their dream?
Ooh, this is a very good one. This is one that I live by, and we started talking about it already, and I just feel that it's important, it's imperative that you understand this and really get it. But in order to be successful, you have to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. And let's make this clear. So, when we talked about hacking across the country, following a path, yes, you follow the path that someone already has created, but that doesn't mean you have to do it the same exact way. And what I mean by that, there's so many other podcast is a great medium. So because everyone else is podcasting, that doesn't mean I stop podcasting. No, my podcast now is going to be different. I'm going to create it in a different way. Just like your podcast, Aimee, is so unique and so cool. It's you, it's Aimee. So you follow your path. So when I see this and when I see it out there in the business world, what that looks like to me is Apple and Microsoft. Two companies who create similar products, but one goes about it in a totally different. Microsoft goes about it in a totally different way than Apple went about doing it. So there you go. You need to be different. We need to stand out. And too often, we try to copycat exactly what everyone else is doing. If we see a business out there and they're doing great, we're going to do exactly everything they're doing. That's the way their particular DNA is set up, not yours. Each of us were born. One of my sales trainers used to always say this: you were born an original. Don't die a copy. And what he meant by that is don't go out and try to be somebody else. You have your own voice, your own way of articulating, your own way of doing something. You follow that and you do that. It doesn't matter if no one else isn't doing it the way you're doing it, because that's awesome. That means you are doing something unique, and you need to maintain that uniqueness. So in order to be successful, do the opposite of what everyone else is doing.
I love that. Because also, to that point, you have to be different. Don't let the fact that someone's doing something already stop you from doing what you want to do.
No, and that's the contrary, actually. If somebody else is doing it, that's when you need to do it. Mm-hmm. Let me give you, I was at a conference, where was it? I was meeting and chatting with some, I can't remember exactly where, but some investors. And one of the things they talked about was just that. When somebody comes to them as an investor and say something like well, I don't have, they go to an investor and they say, I don't have any competition in my business. So that's when the investors will be like, I don't want to talk to you. You need to come back. And they say, might say, why in the world would they not want to talk to me? I have no one competing. That means there's no market there. That means there's nothing there. And if you think that you have no competition, usually you're lying to yourself, because there is competition out there. And if there's no one in there, that means there's no market for you to be able to develop it. So they like to see that. People like to hear that there's a little bit of competition, that there's some other people out there as well. But you just have to be different in the way that you deliver your product to that community or to that market.
And guys, I'm going to end on that note, because that was fantastic and something each of us should be doing. Be different, be you, just like Donald is. And Donald, all the best as you work towards the World Championship for 2016 and for everything else. I mean, with your show, with your business, wishing nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
And that was Donald Kelly. All of it, the entire interview from beginning to end was gold. Everything he was saying was great and helpful and something I want to emphasize that you can use anything he said in this interview. Utilize the advice and lessons he's learned in your own dream chase. It doesn't have to be just in sales. It works especially in sales, but it can be in any aspect of a dream chase. So whether you're trying to become a cook, whether you're trying to be in sales and an entrepreneur, a speaker, a writer, an actor, whatever, you can take the lessons from this podcast episode and apply it to your own dream chase. So want to be clear on that. Okay, so definitely do that. And if you guys could take a second, shout out some support to Donald, who is going after the World Championship Toastmasters contest. He's in the semifinals. Then a few days later, hopefully, fingers crossed and God willing, he will be at the finals. And so shout out some support. It is in August. This episode is not airing in August, so there is some time. But you can reach him at Donald C. Kelly on Twitter and Instagram, and at the Sales Evangelist on Facebook. All of those links, of course, are in the show notes page, which you can find at chasingdreamshq.com/episode 51. That's episode 51. And until next time, guys, keep chasing.
Thank you so much for listening to Chasing Dreams. Aimee would love to connect with you and hear all about your pursuit of chasing your dreams. Connect with her on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram via @ChasingDreamsHQ. Or you can find Aimee on Twitter @AimeeJ21. That's AIMEEJ21. Be sure to visit headquarters over at ChasingDreamsHQ.com for more inspiration, motivation, and resources to help with your own dream chase. We hope you'll join Aimee next week, and until then, keep chasing.